holding you back,
and what was
physically and metaphorically.
They were holding me back and front.
And remind me, what was his name?
Kevin Spacey?
Yes, Professor Spacey.
It's Professor Spaced Out.
Oh, Professor Spacey, I just really want to make sure I pass this semester.
So that's as good a note as I need to start on.
No, wait, that's not the best note.
Yeah.
Right. I wanted this to be a serious interview, but
Well, let's start over.
Clap.
I think we can use all that, but I'll clap for it.
Yeah. Welcome to the Mink and the Monk. I'm your host, Matthew Fink.
I'm Brad Monkel.
Your other host, and we are very happy and honored to have a very special guest waiting outside in the car. So instead, we have Scott Petito here. No, we are very honored to have Scott Petito.
I drove him here as a guest.
And I'm trying to adjust this the whole time. And
I told you not to play with your equipment.
yes.
So professional.
So professional. So let's get into it. How are you, Scott Petito?
I'm just terrible. No. I'm good. I'm good. I'm saying that because I know that's what people really want to hear. But I have to say that it's also true.
You're good.
I'm good.
You're good.
I'm busy. I'm still doing what I do.
What do you do?
Let's
talk about some
once
of the things
again,
you
I'm
do.
in a basement, which is where I usually belong, and
Yeah.
this is good. It's perfect.
Yeah.
What is it I do?
Yeah, let's talk about some of the things you do. So I know you as a fantastic bassist, an incredible arranger, a profound engineer. Profound. And you drive a Tesla.
I do. That's my biggest.
That's pretty
biggest
awesome.
claim.
Yeah. So what else? What am I leaving out? You are a producer.
I do produce records
You also produce concert series
and concerts too. That's true.
Yeah.
See, you know more about me than I do.
Yeah. I would even think of you as a curator.
I would like to think that is a compliment.
No, that's more of a
no, it is. I do
producer,
feel that way, particularly because, and we can talk about this because we've been involved in some of the bands where we've been covering other people's music. But yeah, I kind of think about it in a little different way. Like I want to present the music with a little different approach than maybe like a traditional tribute band. You know, like maybe give some history, add some stuff.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah,
so.
I do too. Actually, yeah. The idea of being in a tribute band doesn't. I when I think of tribute bands, I don't think of any of the projects that you've done.
No, I try not to, and I have to let the musicians be who they are. You know, we're not going to dress up in little funny suits or anything like that. Well, actually, what am I saying?
We can't talk about some of those.
Some
projects.
of those, yes. Yeah. So those projects are different.
So are you like still feeling the effects of the pandemic on the stuff that you're keeping up with right now? And do you feel like you're being pulled a particular way? Like, are you really heavy into the organizing live shows or recording artists right now? Is it one thing in particular, or are you still being pulled like every which way?
Well, I was lucky at the beginning of the pandemic. Just a little history of that. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was in the process of mixing, I think, 4 albums, one of which was Dave Brubeck's Time Out album, the outtakes versions, which basically we got access to the Sony archives, went in, got the tapes, spent literally months really sorting through what was there, and we put together an alternate version of this classic record.
Is that out now?
Yeah, it's been out for actually almost a year, believe it or not, because it came out at the very end of last year. I think it might be, well, it was nominated for Grammy first round. I think we'll probably get in. We'll see. But anyway, so that took a good chunk of my early part of the pandemic, and I was like, oh, great, because I did it all long distance. 2 of the Brubeck brothers actually contracted COVID early. Danny got a very bad case when in Europe playing at Ronnie Scott's. Nobody knew what it was really at the time.
Wow.
So yeah, we were all on our own. So, and then as the pandemic progressed, I had plenty to mix, but then I did start doing some some smaller sessions. I think one of the first ones was a fairly close neighbor of yours was Craig Santiago and Leo Genovese, and I made a record, nice record actually.
Wow.
A trio record of all his stuff.
Wow.
And I think he's down here in Kerhonkson, right? Somewhere. And well, you're not really Kerhonkson. You're kind of. Yeah.
I don't like the fans to know exactly where. Or else I have
Kerhonkson, New Jersey.
Yeah. I've had some stalking issues.
Yeah.
This guy right here, that's why we're doing the podcast together. I found him outside my window.
Yeah, and I always say invite them in when they give you problems.
Yeah.
But so I was lucky. And then we progressed to more and more, wearing masks and playing in the studio as you guys have probably done as well. It stifles a little bit of your creativity. Not to mention your breathing.
I was gonna say, your airstream. Yeah.
But so yeah, until basically we started getting vaccines at the end of the year and into early this year. Now sessions have picked up a lot. Live sessions. I've been doing a lot of streaming recently. It's a mixed bag. And this year, of course, it takes a pandemic for me to go out. I actually have been going out and playing a lot more shows. I just got off a Blues Project tour. The show we did last night with Boledo, the Uruguayan guitarist. So I'm going to continue that through the rest of the year and into next year. But yeah, so
you're also doing the Beatles one. Are you still doing?
Yeah, we did Let It Be, and we actually, which is the third big one in our series. We've done the White Album, which was a bear. Abbey Road, yeah, exactly,
yeah.
And a few other places as well. Usually with those kinds of tributes, I like to go, okay, let's do like 4 shows. I'll find 4 nice spots to play.
Yeah,
so we all make a little money. It's worth the time and effort because it's as you know, a lot of time and effort to put these together. But not beat a dead horse. We could always bring it back in a couple of years or a year or something. Yeah. So that was this year's we did Abbey Road as well, but this year was Let It Be and the Get Back sessions, which is kind of appropriate in light of the Beatles coming out soon with the rehashed Let It Be material, and that one I was really a curator. I literally discussed like they were working on this music, and a lot of it was songs from All Things Must Pass, for instance.
Right.
And there's Beatle versions that exist of them playing a lot of the songs that wound up on George's solo record. They didn't dig it as much, so they dropped them eventually. But it's interesting listening to it. Or Lennon writes a song, Mother Nature. Child of Nature, that's it. And all of a sudden you realize, that's the same melody as Jealous Guy, which appeared, on his solo record a few years later. Yeah. So I kind of pinned all these together, made it a little more of a historic talk. It was like almost a mini TED talk, and we played music. So that was the first time I've done that, and that was fun.
Yeah, I bet it was great.
Yeah, and so we'll do some more. There's a couple of Arts Council shows.
I also saw your Dig a Pony.
The video. Yeah, that was fun.
You're outside in the snow.
That was a pandemic video. Yeah, I like that. I was outside in the snow, but we did it over such a long period of time that Adam's sitting on a park bench in the sunshine, and literally it was just because everybody kept forgetting to send in the video, and like, oh, guess what? 6 months went by.
Yeah, I've done a couple of those, and I forgot we even did that. It was like so much time. Everybody's just started getting busy.
That's the other thing. It's just the displacement. I think, if anything, the displacement of time that I think we all have felt. Like, was that yesterday or was that 3 years ago? So
the last 2 years have definitely made it a time suck. I can't figure out what time has passed sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm sure it's even harder just based on how much you do. Like, I mean, it's crazy to think like how many different things you bite off. Is that like how you've always approached work, and is that like, does that just feel natural for you, or do you have to push yourself to take on so much?
I've been pushing a little more, I think, in recent years. I liked the pace of the pandemic because it was like project rather than project, all on top of each other. Yeah. And that's taken me a bit more time to get used to this idea that, okay, I'm going to run from this to this to this, and and I got 2 records I've got to mix. And so, I like the pace of the pandemic, if there was any good thing that came out of it. And it gave me time to work on another record of my own. It gave me time to walk my dog, just things that I was trying to take things one thing at a time. And in a weird way, it was actually productive as a result because I had less distraction. So when I was working on something, that thing when you practice, 20 good minutes of practice is worth way more than like screwing around for an hour and a half or something, Yeah. And it was sort of like, I felt like that. I felt focused during that period.
It was nice to not feel like being in the rat race.
Yeah.
As long as whoever you were living with.
Right. Exactly.
Somebody that you enjoyed living with.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we basically have 2 buildings. So I was relegated to one for 11 months.
Hence this room.
Yeah, this is the room. Yes. We all have. I got a building. Someday you can get.
Well, I have the whole.
You do have the whole thing.
Building yet, but
no, this is just beautiful here.
Oh, thank you. It's very peaceful outside and quiet.
It's incredible.
Unless people show up 30 minutes early.
I know. I was out there barking, actually. I thought that might get your attention.
Yeah, I didn't realize you. Yeah, sorry about that. I was like, wait, did I give him the wrong time?
No. I didn't realize I would get here so fast.
You have a Tesla.
Yeah, 0 to 60 in three. Mine's 3 seconds, but.
Loser. Yeah, I think the new ones are 2.6.
I think 2.2. Actually, if you get the S with the plaid, it's 1.9. So, yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's something ridiculous.
That is such an amazing feeling.
Yeah, you can really feel like you're plastered to the back of the seat. Yeah. It's pretty funny.
In fact, you can get plastered and let the car drive you home.
Exactly. Trust me.
Yeah, we'll get to that in the second half of this.
Tesla, sponsor us.
Yes.
Moms Against Drunk Driving, sponsor us.
Well, it's interesting you say that because, my good friend Rachel Z, she's really on this idea of getting Elon Musk to take one of the Tesla trucks and create a concert stage to bring concerts all over the country. I'm literally trying to contact him every day and send out fleets of these. So it's sort of this, because they both, her and her husband Omar Hakim, both have Teslas, which of course, to be in that club, you have to buy one. So that's why I had to get one. So you can't talk to them if you don't have one.
So rehearsals at your crib look really nice.
Oh, it's insane. And then, of course, we have 2 other friends who have them. So it looks like a Tesla showroom.
Very nice.
But no, it was like a 10-minute ride with Omar in his Tesla. I was like, oh, man. I got to have one of these. I needed a new. My lease was coming off of a car, and I thought, I got to get a car anyway. Why not this one? So
I forget what you were driving. I mean, I know you have your seasonal Porsche.
A Mini. A Mini.
Right.
I loved my Mini. I still do. I think they're great.
Yeah.
But it was interesting, not to get off on the Tesla tangent, but as a traveling player and musician, I logged about 1,400 miles in the last 2 weeks going around, and I've had to. It's great. But I have to also factor in some time to charge. It's superchargers, which is not like just pulling up and getting gas in 5 minutes.
Right.
Depending on how busy they are, you're taking a half-hour break or so.
Yeah.
So sometimes a 4-hour trip is now a 5-hour trip.
But not horrible though.
No, it's not, because most of the time,
give you a break in between.
By the time I pee and have coffee and then pee again.
Yes.
Yeah. You know how it is.
Yeah, yes.
But it was interesting because that's the first time. Actually, it was weird. There's another pandemic thing and I don't know if you guys have felt it because you guys were still out in the world a bit, but I was really kind of in the studio doing most of my stuff. But going on a drive that was more than like 50 miles, it was like, wow, what's this about?
Yeah.
I'm not there yet. I mean, like, I go to my coffee shop. It's 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So, it was kind of like a little bit of shock going, oh, wow. Yeah, it takes hours to get over there.
I've been in person teaching this whole time.
Yeah.
So
like, you're traveling.
I'm traveling. And it's interesting because I'm just, you had to do it in order to survive. Mm-hmm. Like, nobody wants to, I don't want to teach online. And students don't want to. Maybe some do, but it's not the same. It's so like that would be one of the downsides of like music online to make videos like this, like your Dig a Pony and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. It's still not the same as being in a room.
No, but it was fun to do, and it was like, hey, you want to do this because we can?
Yeah, right. But that feeling of hanging, with the exception of,
now, come on now,
hey man, hey,
he's no chopped liver.
We'll go bass players unite on you.
Yeah, exactly. It's true. You're only a lowly guitarist.
That's true.
Yeah.
And which
man who can't deal with thicker strings.
I like thicker strings. I like it thick. I like them thick. You know, it's just it's a tone thing. But speaking of multi-instrumentalists, so that's a perfect segue into Rainbow Gravity.
Okay.
And also the records with Leslie.
All right.
That you made. So I always find myself, we could start with this. I get annoyed when I hear somebody who doesn't get recognized as a guitar player play really great guitar. That's annoying to me that you can actually, and it's the same thing with Jennifer does too. It's like ridiculous. And then, you know, Jerry too, when he holds a guitar, he sounds beautiful. So it annoys the piss out of me because I really only can barely play the guitar. And if we talk about some descriptions of me by other musicians we mentioned earlier, I can't play guitar at all.
Yeah. Well, that's not true. You're a wonderful guitar player. I'm not saying that just so I can get back on the show, but if that helps,
I appreciate it. Yeah,
you should hear him on the bagpipes.
No, you guys are both incredibly skilled musicians, and you know, this is something you got to do for your whole life. That's the way it is. You know? You get better. So you think you got it figured out, and next day you get up and go, got some more shit I got to work on.
Yeah,
shit. Okay,
I think so. Yeah. I don't know if we could check the box for kids now.
We went over this, Matt. We don't check the box.
It's
not
for
kids.
Okay, not for kids.
It's not for kids.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you.
So Rainbow Gravity, right? You gave me a copy of that. I can't remember the last time I saw you.
Probably the last time you saw me. Yeah. So it's been a couple of years.
Did that come out? Is it 17 or 18?
We actually came out in 18. So yeah, probably that's about the last time we saw each other. I don't remember where.
Probably at your house.
Yeah, I think so.
I think I think I was recording there.
Yeah, that could have been when John was there.
Yeah.
It might have been just towards the end of this last session.
John Ball,
yeah.
Matthew Fink, Jonathan Ball project.
Yeah, beautiful.
Shout out,
beautiful music.
Little Randy Brecker.
Yeah, I got Randy on my new one too. So
I saw that. I saw that. Did you get his number from me?
No. I got it from Chris Payson.
yeah. Chris has it. I'm sure he does.
No, he does. Yeah. He's very graciously gave it to me.
Yeah. So I went.
Strike.
I listened to it in the car when you gave it to me on the way home, and I remember.
Did you have anything to play it on, or just?
I have a CD player in my 07.
Wow, that's amazing because they're disappearing.
Yeah, I know that you have in the Tesla a full size iPad 12.9 as a dashboard.
Yeah, but nothing else.
Nothing else.
There's nothing else. No, it's really it's kind of, you know, I really feel sort of ripped off at times, you know.
Because you don't have a CD player?
Because I don't have any knobs or anything. I mean, it's just like, couldn't they give me a couple of knobs for that much money, you know?
Well, they probably heard the rumors about
switches,
you and your knobs and
switch here and there.
Yeah, I know, it's amazing.
Yeah,
my wife's uncle recently got one and let me, probably not in his own best interest, but let me drive it, and it was absolutely. I couldn't believe it's a feat of engineering.
It really is. Yeah, it really is.
In a lot of ways, I didn't know this was going to be a Tesla infomercial. But
I don't mind because we're going to. Well, I have some stock, so I'll be happy to keep boosting it.
Yeah, Elon will appreciate it. He's listening, right?
Yeah. I'm sure Elon's.
Yes, and if you're a musician out there, invest into something somewhere,
not CDs. Don't make those anymore, right?
No, you know, but it's true. You know, again, I don't want to take us off on a tangent, but that's another thing about hopefully being successful as a musician. It's not just about you learn your craft and then hope the world's going to discover you. You need to build into it, and then if you have some success, save some money, invest in things, buy a house, build a house. And you'll be a happier person. You'll have a life, basically.
Yeah, if you have some place you can spend your time enjoying the fruits of your labor.
I mean, it makes a difference because we almost think we're supposed to be martyrs somehow, and in effect, by putting that weight on yourself, many people wind up being kind of music martyrs.
Yeah,
and that always makes me very sad.
Yeah, and I don't know anybody who's. I've thought about this. I don't know any of those martyrs who are very happy.
That's exactly what it is.
It is interesting though because it depends on. You never know what people are going to be interested in, what you're putting out. So the best you can do is keep putting out stuff, content, whether it's curating concerts and playing for audiences that want to hear something they already know, or putting new music out there, but. it is, you can't blame them for not liking something. You just have to put it out, keep putting it out, and see
no,
what happens.
and hopefully you identify that it's not about selling out or anything else, but you got to kind of meet the audience somewhere.
You do,
because if you're just, I mean, I there are examples of successful people who have always just done what they did, and they just kind of plowed through, and they kind of made the audience accept what it is they do. But I don't think most of us have that ability, and we need to listen. We need to listen to them, and I think in the end that makes us better, and also that allows us more space to go in more directions.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah,
but I don't know. We'll see.
You don't know?
I don't know. I just make this stuff up for podcasts. So.
Yeah, I heard that's what you're supposed to do. I heard you just
let's talk about me again. Now, and what were we talking about? My wonderful guitar playing. Yes.
Yeah, so what were we talking about? I don't think I've talked to you since I had that copy of that, but I went this week and listened to 4 albums that you had something to do with. So we could start with that. Well, I know there has to be hundreds on there by now, right?
Hundreds of albums
that you've worked on as an engineer, as a producer,
it's really into the low 1,000 plus. It's like 1,500 legitimate records that I'm actually contributing a reasonable amount to, and then that doesn't count having mastered, mixed, or whatever, so many more. So
yeah. So on Rainbow Gravity, I know you have some questions.
Yeah, I love Rainbow Gravity.
Oh, thanks.
Not a question.
You
want to start again? Brett, I know you have some questions.
I love Rainbow Gravity.
That's right. I went through it though. It's a really marvelous display of compositions that you have, and also just it's nice to hear the bass properly in the mix.
Oh, thank you.
You might be biased on that.
I guess I am. I mean, I think when I write, if I'm going to write something for myself at least, and I try to leave space in there, and of course, the musicians on that particular project are very aware of production aspects of creating music. I don't mean that in a like a hey, let's make it snazzy. It's just that, arranging really is what it comes down to. They're self-arranging as well as whatever I give them. Yeah. And they always, normally most people make really great choices. So on this record, I was lucky,
Well, you're lucky that you play with those people and you were able to get them and they love what you're doing. So,
I don't know if I ever told you this, but I had no intentions of doing the sort of superstar record with the guy that nobody knows, but they're all people, yes, all people I've worked with in one capacity or another. Most everyone I've at least played some music with before, definitely made records with before. It was Jack DeJohnette actually who kind of said, after I did my solo bass record, he thought, man, we ought to do something together. It was Jack. He actually offered and said, we ought to do something together because he was really loved that ambient thing. Yeah, so that's where Dark Pools came from, that particular song. And Cymbal Bells as well. I just wanted to have us play kind of free, but I had an idea like, okay, this is sort of what I wanted with this rolling cascading. I always call it Jack playing the washing machines. Like you could, And so that was the arrangement. It was like, Jack, be the washing machine, and I'm going to just kind of, swirl around you. And the other one, I said,
let's be the Woolite.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the Woolite in your life. Yeah. And the other song, well, we did a couple of songs, but the one that's not really a song, Cymbal Bells was really an attempt to exploit bass harmonics with these particular bells, the tuned bells that he was using. Yeah. So there was intention in the composition, but there was also freedom to just say it's more of a concept. Yeah. I love playing free, but I also just love having some instruction. Yeah. So those pieces kind of fell into that. And then there's obviously the really through composed stuff, So, yeah. Which, I think I still do best at that. I always feel personally that I start to second guess my free playing. And that's when you're in trouble in a sense in that world. You just sort of have
conscious thoughts coming into it.
Yeah. It's, I don't think, I've thought about this a lot, like where can you stop thinking but still have awareness, and what is that line between I'm thinking about something. I'm thinking about a place to go as opposed to an awareness of what my options are.
Yeah.
Some of it bubbles up subconsciously. You know? So it's
What an amazing place to explore with Jack DeJohnette.
Yeah. I'm really lucky to do that. So that was great. And then, just a number. And then that one's rich. And so is I have a new one that I just about done with.
Another full length?
Yeah. It's, that's the one Randy's on. Who else is on? Bob Minzer. He's been an old friend of mine, so he's on both records.
And Bob was on. Yeah, I was going to say
he's on both.
I forget. He was. I'm forgetting the track that he was. Was it the first track?
He's on Sli-Fi. He's on
Sli-Fi. Right.
Yeah, Sequence of Events. You probably know better than me. I can.
Well, I never look at the feature part because it's usually like cut off my phone.
Yeah.
So I more so know the track names than exactly who's on everything.
What. Yeah.
I mean, my favorite track, we talked about this last time I interviewed you, was a Balsamic Reduction. I love that tune.
I really love that song too. I rarely play that one out live because I find it's an interesting one. I think it's, some of those songs that you go, well, it's not hard, but it has so much subtlety. Mm-hmm. That to pull it off live, you go, it's not quite there yet. Now, maybe you work on it for a few weeks, or you get to tour with a band, you'll have it totally down. But I always think of that one whenever I do a show, and I go, I'd like to feed that into the mix. But and I definitely will, because there's something about that too. That was one of those ones that's, this feeling as a writer. Sometimes songs you have to really work at, and other ones they just kind of come to you, like the whole shape of it, and you don't get written into a corner. And that's to me is like, wow, that's great, because I was a comp major at Berkeley. I played bass obviously, but I don't know if I really learned anything there.
Were you arranging there as well?
Yeah, I was arranging and composition, so that's always been critical. And if anything, that has played into my production career, because I just think of production as sort of another word for arrangement, and leaving spaces and understanding the overtone series. Really comes down to that in a sense. Everything kind of comes down to what's happening at the top as opposed to the bottom.
And
it's amazing. You can make a very big sounding record that doesn't have 5,000 parts if you arrange those voices and sounds correctly.
That makes sense, and that's a pretty good description of that record.
I
would say, because it's. I was listening to it, and it's like everything seems to be exactly where it should be to support the musical idea that you have in mind.
I appreciate that, and that's definitely was the goal.
Yeah. Also, you used. It's like I meant to ask you this, because there's a couple where you're playing the bass. Where you're playing the melody, but it sounds like it's not actually is it either a like a 6-string bass, or do you have some kind of piccolo?
It's a piccolo and soprano bass. And solos I'm playing. I mean, some people say, who's playing guitar on the record? But there are actually, other than David Spinoza playing on Balsamic Reduction and a tiny bit on Sli-Fi, there's no guitar. So
there was. Okay, then
that's all piccolo.
There was somewhere I knew it was guitar on Balsamic Reduction, and I thought there was another thing.
But I do play piccolo bass. I play strangely enough, for whatever reason on that record, and I think it's because of the way I was writing it. I also had just acquired the soprano bass that I got really into. Soprano and piccolo are basically the same. It's just that this one also happens to be smaller, so he calls it that. Okay. But it's an octave up, and it really worked out really well. And in the arrangement, and it was like, well, I don't want everybody to pair back. I like the fact that they're all, creating this nice wash. And then the guitar could have done it, and I could have even played guitar solos. And I thought, maybe, but I would play the piccolo bass, and it was just right. And a lot of those solos were just like first and second takes, because it just felt like the right instrument. You know? Whereas I played regular bass, and I felt like, I'm murking things up. It just doesn't feel right.
It was interesting to hear your touch on those. Like, you can really hear this beautiful. I mean, I'm assuming that was all plucked on the.
Yeah, I'm pretty much all fingers. I use a pick once in a while, but not rarely.
I did. It sounds like flesh.
Oh, nice.
But I was. That's where I really, because I'm not used to. I'm normally, when I'm playing with you, have a regular
regular bass.
Yeah. Or the first time I played with you, when we did that benefit, and you were playing It looks like a bass, but it's thin, but it's got a beautiful wood veneer.
Oh, what was I playing? Was that the one
I
of the,
remember-
the NS basses or something? Like the upright?
It's an upright, but it's very thin.
Yeah.
And it's sitting in your studio,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah,
it? Or
it's my-
behind the B3? Or
Yeah, that's my NS basis.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was the first time I met you. We did a benefit,
Oh, that's right. Wow.
and I thought of her name
Forgot
came to me
about
this
that.
morning. Jenny Litt.
That's it.
That's the first time that I can't remember the year. I can't remember when that was.
I've forgotten everything about that. Next, cut.
No, but I remember that's where I met you on, and I remember looking at that instrument, and then and I'm like, I don't know who this is. Like, I didn't know who. Like, I don't know how long I was back.
I had no idea who you were. You were just
yeah.
I said, "Who's the dude playing with the guitar? Is that a guitar?"
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, but
yeah.
But you have a lot of basses.
I do have a lot of basses
in your studio.
I tell people this all the time. Believe me, for the first 25 years I played bass, I only really used my Steinbergers. I had two,
which you were kind enough to lend me.
I did about
4 years ago to do, or 5 years ago.
Wow, I forgot about that.
Yep, both the
Jeez,
guitars.
you know a lot about me.
Wow.
But those basses, I gravitated toward one. I was traveling. I was with the Fugs and a couple of other bands, and going on an airplane. Hey, that bass fits right under my arm, and this was
a hard time.
This was before they really gave you a hard time. Now it's really hard, but back then it was like, oh, this is really easy. I've got it right here. So I started that way, but then I just gravitated and loved them, and then I wound up doing a Rory Block tour, and Mark Egan I think had played on some of the songs on the record we did. So I didn't have a fretless Steinberger, so I literally picked up a fretless one on my way to the airport from Ned
in Newburgh?
when they were in Newburgh. Yeah,
really?
Yeah, and it still smelled of like hot graphite and plastic. It was like I was like sniffing the bass on the way to the. It was good. It was kind of a very toxic smell.
Chill you out on the plane, like relax you a
it was
bit.
great. But then that bass really for a long time, because I was in the singer-songwriter world, which is the stuff I did with Leslie. And I was working with Livingston Taylor and James Taylor and everything else. And at the time, Michael Manring was doing his thing. So a lot more fretless. And I kind of stayed away from the fretless because of the Jocko thing since Jocko, because I was a clone for sure. And then I just one day went, I'm not going to play that for a while.
You just walked and stepped away from it.
Yeah, so it was like maybe 10, 15 years almost before I went back into that pool.
Gotcha.
And those basses were great, but this is a long-winded story, but basically two of them, the tuners started to fall apart, and I couldn't get repair parts because Ned had sold Steinberger to Gibson, but Gibson wasn't manufacturing any parts. So then I said, well, I guess I got to go out and start looking for a new bass. And 45 basses later, or whatever it is, I don't even know. I honestly don't know.
You have a lot of basses.
Yeah,
you have a lot of guitars.
Yeah, I do have quite a few guitars.
Yeah. And a swordfish.
Yeah, maybe two. Who knows?
Are there two in there?
No, I got a moose.
Since I've seen you? Or?
The moose is out front. I just redid my moose.
Really?
Yeah, I needed a new moose. Moose rotted.
Is it a wood moose?
It's a moose.
It's okay.
it's straight moose.
It's straight up moose.
Straight up moose.
Straight up moose. Okay. I think we found the title for your new album.
Straight up moose. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think you're playing on fretless. To go back to a Balsamic Reduction again.
Yeah.
My favorite part of the track is you're playing locked in with the drums. Is that Simon Phillips?
Yeah, that song is Simon. Yeah.
And I think my two favorite parts of the song are that little break you do in the head and where you slide up the note on the fretless, and then when Simon kicks into the groove for the first solo.
So great, isn't it?
I love that groove in that. But I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on what with the amazing cast of drummers you got to have on that album. As a bassist, what do you get out of each of those drummers? Like how do they make you feel? Yep. Playing with them and that's like the sense of rhythm they give to you.
Well, Simon and I had been working on two records right before we started tracking that, and we were playing quite a bit because one of them was a singer-songwriter record, and another was I guess it was sort of a fusion-y album with a few people from LA. So we were starting to get a rapport. We played a few gigs. Actually, Uncle Pete was on a couple of those gigs. But anyway, the feeling with Simon in particular is, I really feel that it's funny because he drives Formula One cars as a hobby. You feel like you're in the drag stream of a Formula One. He is one of the most supportive drummers I've ever encountered, who also has technique beyond most. I don't know if you've ever seen him playing with Hiromi, with the trio with Hiromi. Some of that with Anthony Jackson is arguably some of the most complex, insane music on some levels, at least in that idiom. And precision, wonderful precision, almost like classical musicians, which Hiromi is, of course. So you just feel like, I'm just being
summoned.
Everywhere time is perfect. You're just like, wow, you don't have to ever worry about where the time sits.
Yeah.
And, as a bass player, I like to try to think that, well, I'm not going to just rely on the drummer for time, but it just confirms that you're really in that place.
Yeah.
And that's true of all of these drummers. But Simon sort of, and I think it's partly because he also, he was the drummer after Keith Moon and The Who. He was the drummer after Jeff Porcaro and Toto. So he's been around pop music and click tracks and playing in that way for a long time. Plus, he just is a very precise human being. So it's a pleasure to feel his time, and he never leaves you hanging out to dry. He will play the most crazy fill, and you go, yeah, one. There it is. No guesswork. No guesswork. Yeah. We're right back where we should be.
That's nice.
So that's great. Omar, I can't say anything. I almost can't say enough great things about him because he's also really become a really good friend. We're working on an Atmos studio at his house where we've done several projects together. We've put this new band that I hope next year we'll get to do some festivals with. And he has a bit more of an organic tone. He has more things just ring more, and they have just more what's the rawness about it, but yet with also incredible precision. So the combination is just really good because that makes me play a little differently. I play a little bit more aggressively in some ways. Simon, I tend to want to be really smooth and just I have lots of room, but Omar, I really want to dig into the groove. So that was really great. And Peter Erskine's been an old friend of mine. He actually dated one of my best friends in high school. So I've known him for years because they made some records together. And then we started doing some things, and I knew him from Weather Report, just being around at the time. And I think he's just maybe like one of the most perfect drummers in the world.
I was listening to him yesterday.
It's just... you almost can't point at one aspect. He's incredible brushwork, for instance, still has incredible groove and control. Also has a very classical background, so has precision and really can. And in fact, that's why he gets called, I think, so much for work in LA, doing everything from the Oscars to the stuff like that. Because that's the type of stuff where you're reading complex stuff potentially. But comfortable in pretty much any style, has a great backbeat as well as can swing. So it's great. And Jack is Jack. There's almost no other way to describe it. It's just, that's the rawest energy. And my favorite way of hearing Jack play is when he's almost reckless abandon. And you just, it's like the whole thing is just this bed of, beauteous stuff,
Yeah.
So that's and they are very distinct players, no doubt about it. And you do approach playing with them differently, but they all make it easy. And I think that's why I still feel like if there was anybody in the band I wanted to call most important, and I don't like to say that, but I think you don't really have a band if you don't have a great drummer. You might have a collection of really good musicians, but when that drummer's not even leading is the wrong word. When that drummer's just sitting in the right place, everybody's just,
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
I'm biased as a bassist, but I care the most about the drummer on any gig. If I had to have any other one instrument on a gig with me, I always want a drummer.
Yeah, the bass player is very important. Every instrument's important, but if and I'm not going to rank them, but I feel like I don't really have a band as a bass player if I'm fighting the drummer, then we're never going to have a great gig. You know what I mean? And that's going to affect everybody else, the soloists on top, anybody who's playing part of the rhythm section. It puts a lot of pressure in a sense on the drummer, but that's why they chose to play that instrument. That's the one thing. I mean, I really think that there is an emphasis sometimes on chops to the point that stuff like basic stuff starts to suffer like time.
Mm-hmm.
Once time suffers, you're not just it's not just bad for the drum part, it's bad for the band. So that, and I don't want to critique it any more than that, than to just say play with the best drummers you can find. And I'm spoiled. I mean, and I say that saying I also know many, many wonderful drummers who aren't necessarily as famous as these guys, But they're all really wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I have another question about drummers that I'd like to circle back to, but before that, I want to know, like, in making Rainbow Gravity, was it more so that process of, like you said, like writing the song with Jack, that it kind of just organically came together out of the writing process, or did you build the album with a specific idea in mind? Was it very like a personal sound you had in mind, or were you influenced heavily by something in particular?
Because I could, and because I was asking people basically one at a time, or they would say, "What are you up to?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to make a record." And I said, "I got this tune," and I'd play something for somebody, and they'd go, "Oh man, that's great! I could do something on that." That happened so many times; it was amazing. Yeah. So I think I only really asked maybe 2 people on the entire record to actually play on it. They just sort of organically, that's why I can't even, it sort of just morphed together. And my old friend Bashiri Johnson, I knew I was going to have him at the end just do his thing over top of the whole record. I was a percussionist, and we've worked on a million records. And maybe Bob, only because I hadn't seen him in a while, I said, "Hey Bob, I got like 4 songs, you into it?" And everybody was very gracious. Some people, I had to like force them to take any money, which was pretty crazy. But and some people I traded things for because I was already working on something. But so it was just a lucky thing. I think you're on it.
Was there a particular influence to the style that you were writing in, or was that more just like personally the direction you felt pulled to go?
I felt like I've played so many different kinds of music, and then for so many years I was kind of like the singer-songwriter, folk, acoustic guy, and then I was the guy who made all of the jazz projects around, either as a producer or as a engineer, which was great. I love wearing all those hats. It feels good to me. In fact, it probably keeps me sane. But yeah, that I really had the intention of going, I want to honor some of the stuff that was important to me. Chick, who I'd gotten to work with not long before. In fact, it was something he played and said that kind of inspired me on a number of tunes. What was a sequence of events? This the cycle of chords in there. Not typical for me because there's actually a couple of 2/5s in there, but I don't do that. I'm like everybody else. We write modern songs with non-functional harmony, and it's like, but Chick did that, but then there would be a twist. It's a 2/5, but he went to the 6 instead, or whatever. It's something to like. You go, and so some of that, and sometimes feel, like a Latin feel or something in an odd time or something. There's not much odd time on that record. There's a little bit, but not much. But yeah, I mean, I at some of them, I very specifically saw the players in my head. Like I said, I'm going to write this melody in such a way that I know it's going to sit incredible on the vibes for Mike to play, for instance. Or, same with Bob Minzer. I knew his tone inside and out, and I knew where he was really strong in the registers and everything, and said, I'm going to optimize these. So yeah, I had the luxury to do that, and I thought about it because I think that's the job of a composer. If you did a concerto, very often especially the first debut of a concerto, you'll often know who the soloist might be or who the lead player might be. I know Chris Brubeck definitely does this when he writes for an instrument. So he tries to take advantage of their strong suit and their strongest thing. So that's basically what I was doing. I'm going like, this is an optimum vehicle for this guy, and he's going to have a good time. So therefore, he's going to play the crap out of it.
Yeah,
as opposed to play this thing that's really not great for this instrument and make it sound good,
Right.
So there's that, and I think that's another lesson we all can learn, and I'm glad I think I've learned it. Although I still make mistakes. You go, oops, that maybe wasn't the best idea. But a lot of these players, not all of them, but many of them, I've used across the years on totally different music. Like a lot of them might come from my work with Michael Franks, because Michael was famous for like having 30 great musicians on his records. So, I could name 20 more guys that I worked with regularly that I could easily have added. At one point, I was thinking about doing a bass record with just my bass friends like Mark Egan and Jimmy Aslip and all these guys that we've actually co-produced tracks on the same album, and we all have our own way of doing things. I may do that at some point, but yeah, so it's fun.
Yeah. Well, back to the drummers in that same realm, do you have like when it comes to writing for people, do you have like any like drummers you'd love to write for one day? Like
who I'd love to write for?
Yeah.
Well, I got a little bit of a chance for that this summer because I did 2 songs with Steve Gadd, and I was like, I've known Steve Gadd since I was 17. And I think we went through all of this, like growing up in Woodstock. I met Mike Maneri, and I used to go to Steve Gadd's house and listen to stuff, rehearse, and all these guys, because Mike's son Fred was a friend of mine. So that was our after-school activity, was going to see.
Wow, that's not horrible.
Gadd and the Brecker brothers rehearse in his little 375. This is pre-Jerry, and Tony had moved up here part-time. So Tony was part of the first Steps as well, which was called L'Image.
Really?
So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then they originally called themselves Steps, got a deal in Japan, and then later found out that there already was a band named Steps. Didn't care, put the record out anyway, got sued, and then it became Steps Ahead. So that was part of it. But yeah, the original band was Warren Bernhardt, Mike Maneri, Steve Gadd, Tony Levin, and who played keys then? Oh no, it was Warren. Warren played keys. Don Grolnick was a little bit later. David Spinoza played guitar. So that was the core group that didn't and that was close to the band that recorded. Only they added Brecker, and Eddie Gomez wound up playing bass instead of Tony, because Tony, I think, probably got Paul Simon around that time. So he started working with him, or Carly. They were also basically Carly Simon's backup band at the time. So this is like 78-ish or so. So it was a big learning experience for me. And then I lost touch with a few of them. But Gadd had always been a good guy and a friend of mine, so getting to, and we were originally, he was going to play on Rainbow Gravity, but during the making of the second L'Image record, Warren Bernhardt actually had a heart attack during one of the best piano solos I've ever heard.
Really?
Yeah. He's like, and he finishes and goes, I'm not feeling so good. So yeah.
My God.
Yeah. And so it was crazy. So we had to get him to the hospital. We called up his doctor, and he said, get him to the hospital right away. He didn't look like he was, but he had a heart attack, and it was during playing.
This was in your studio?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And so then we had to finish the record without him and overdub, because they had really literally just played down the record, maybe do a few takes.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very few overdubs. And Gadd was always, he was very upset by Warren, but once we knew he was going to be okay, it was every morning.
He was pissed that Warren had the nerve to have a heart attack.
Yeah. So things like that, or he'd walk in the morning and go, angiogram for Mr. Bernhardt. Stuff like that. But we knew he was going to be okay by then. But what was the other one? Oh, he counts off a song. He's going 4, 3, 2, 1, clear. So he's kind of a card, But in a very loving way. It was a way to kind of combat some of the stress, and we had to kind of do it because he was going to be leaving on the road for Clapton for like 6 months or something, and that's the end of that. No more Gadd.
Yeah.
But so being able to write for him has been great. working more with Omar on a few things is really a pleasure. The last couple of years, I've also been working with percussionist Mino Sinaloo, and we have a really good kind of relationship somehow. Just we think a lot alike, so I'm looking forward in the spring. We're going to do some projects together, so that's good. Aside from the hopefully modern times thing we've got going, if we can.
You got a lot of projects.
I do, but you know,
got a lot of pots.
I'm old.
You're old.
I'm old. I only have so much time left to do this stuff. You know. You know that peak? You go, oh yeah, man, I'm like the peak of my thing.
Is there a peak? I'm gonna keep on the lookout. For that.
Keep on the lookout.
Yeah.
You got some time, but and I think I have some time too. But I actually have seen
some body aches.
Yeah,
if that counts.
Well, they might add up one day.
Yeah,
you know, to you.
They're adding up.
You know, to you just going, oh heck, I can't
see anymore.
You're having a heart attack in the middle of a great solo.
That's been the hardest thing for me is the vision change because I can't.
Bastard. No glasses, no contacts.
But it is, you know, and then somebody throws this crazy chart in front of you, and you're trying to read the chart, and you get your glasses set at just the right place, but then you want to look at everybody else, and you're like, and you don't see anything. It's
I have the
I tried them. They worked for a while, but then they just got too weird, and I was like, you know.
Yeah. And I also have 3 pairs of readers.
If I want that kind of experience, there's acid, you know.
There is acid. That's true. I find that the best thing though is the iPad for reading now.
Yeah, it is.
Just as far, it's just crisp and it's backlit.
It is. It's true. Yeah. It's much better.
Old eye problems.
Yeah, and they mean something. Who watches these podcasts? Is this my musicians?
Mom. My mother mostly. Yeah. In her limited vision.
I do some knitting. I crochet on occasion. So if there's any questions from the audience,
we're getting to the good stuff.
This music stuff. It's like, you know, I've talked about it, but nobody ever asked me about my crochet.
I was going to ask you about your sweater. It's
one.
lovely.
Oh, I knit one and purl too. Yeah, but I spilled on the way down, I think so.
Because you're driving too fast.
I'm driving too fast, yeah.
I could follow up with a question that's talking about just working with Jack. Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite recordings in the last, I could say 5 years, I guess, is Hudson with John Scofield. So I actually was curious about, I don't know how much of that record you've checked out, but I went and saw that live.
Did you see the band? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was amazing. But I also saw the videos you were posting.
Yeah.
But are you 2 questions, I guess. Are you producing on that?
Yeah.
Okay. So
co-producing with the band, but yeah, we're all producers for that.
I would think that with all those players.
And you know what's great is they are all friends and they have immense faith in me, and they went out on the road and said, "Dad, just do your thing."
Yeah, I remember you telling me that.
So I mix, and that happens with a lot of my projects these days because people, especially some of the older guys who they've spent some time in the studio. They don't need to spend any more. They're like, just send us when you're happy, send it to us.
I didn't know that was a thing until you told me that's what you were doing. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, oh, that sounds so much better than what I would do with coming over and like painstakingly going. Like there was no need.
In the end, Jack came over like the last day after we were all pretty happy, and we both sat there. I think, maybe Larry did too, but everybody else was on the road. And we just made some very final tweaks, and that was it. You know, just like.
So he gave you insight on where he wanted things panned as far as he was? Or
sometimes that, you know, it's, you got, with Jack in particular, you got to remember he played on so many records. He often played, left, and he was lucky if he even heard the record until, you know, somebody put it in his face.
Right.
Even all the Miles stuff, nobody stayed around for that. Often not even Miles. It was just Theo. So a lot of them just didn't have, and Manfred with ECM, it was like they might sit for a playback, but they weren't going to be in on a mix session. They didn't care.
So that's got to be great for you, right?
It is. It gives me a little bit of freedom. I mean, I'm with music like that in particular, but really with everything I try to do, I'm always trying to mix as we're going along. Now, it isn't always possible to have a final mix, but I'm a little bit lazy, and I want to be able to just stand up and go, things sound good. I don't have to move that fader or go, oh, wait, this will sound better if we do this. Or once you can hear that.
Right.
So I'm trying to track it in such a way that it always kind of feels like it could be a mix.
Yeah.
With you, it's hard because guitar goes up, guitar goes down. No, I don't. I got 5 more fuzz pedals I need to play. No, I really am kidding. No, it's not him at all. No, it's not him at all.
No, but it is amazing to hear those things with SCO, and it just feels like I doubt there's any punches and any of that stuff.
No, not with anybody in that group, because once we left the heads, we were in improv land.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean that sometimes we don't fix a few things, especially if it's in a head. But with that band, I don't recall doing it. We had another take that had it perfect. I mean, Schofield's very let go. To be honest, that's a common trait among most of the more well-known jazz musicians I know, is their ability to let go. If it was a really bad take, they go, let's do another one.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, that's the take then.
Yeah.
They are auto-corrected what was not right about it.
Yeah. It feels like that when you're listening to it. It still feels like a live
Schofield's
recording.
famous for, that's how I played it,
Yeah, it's
that's
awesome.
what it is.
Yeah, and every time I've heard him play live, or every studio recording I have, it always has that same exact feeling, which I, as a producer or as someone who's working in that environment, you do feel that's that you enjoy that more?
Well, yeah, I won't go so far as to say more, but I enjoy the fact that the artists themselves is enjoying what they're doing.
So you're an enabler at that point.
Yeah, I hope so. That's the whole thing. Right. I want to get things up, ready, going, support it. Say, right. The nice thing is I've gotten to the point where, musicians mostly do ask my opinion. I mean, that kind of quasi-famous story when I worked with Keith Richards of I literally yelled out to Keith. I said, "So what do you think of that?" And he goes, "I don't know. That's what the fuck you're here for." And I'm like, sorry if I said something for the children on the show, but
Matt's mom.
Just bleep that.
A lot of 8-year-old Keith fans.
Yeah, a lot of 8-year-olds.
Yeah, he's really popular on TikTok.
But strangely enough, that was funny at the time. But it was also like, oh yeah, okay, right. I do have a role in this, and then I should take that seriously, and evaluate it, and it's good. It's what they expect. The artists, they don't want to be told a lot of stuff, but just, I think maybe there's a better take. Can we try another one? That's a pretty powerful thing to say if because you're an audience member at that point.
I rely on that in the studio with you. I know, even mixing with you, where I'll hear something, and I'll make a note of it. Okay, let's bring that up when we're done listening to this. And by the time I bring it up, you had already fixed it without me saying anything. Like you have those kinds of ears. We're
often. Well, I think hopefully we're at the same basic place. But the truth is there's a lot of audio hallucinations that occur, and things we think we hear, things we don't hear. Because we concentrate somewhere else. So, it's a lot of sleight of hand going on in music. So, I appreciate it, especially at the later stages. If you're going to sit there and watch me EQ a kick drum, which I rarely do, it makes me nervous. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if you come in a little bit later in the process and go, oh, yeah, okay, how can we try this? Then we have a little laundry list of things. We haven't lost the plot.
Yeah.
Sometimes you lose the plot.
Yeah, that's a horrible place to be, because it costs a lot of money to lose that plot.
It does, because then people come back in and go, "Man, what were we thinking?"
What were we thinking? Yeah, that's a rough spot to be in. I don't enjoy that spot at all.
And I'd say 90% of the time in pop, whether it's pop, jazz, or anything else, those first impressions tend to be right. They're second guessing them. And if they're really wrong, the next morning it tells you that, and you do a fix, and you're good to go.
Yeah, the problem with today, for me, and not the problem with today, what I struggle with
Kids today.
What I struggle with is I can't put together enough gigs or concerts with the same band to walk into the studio and just say, let's just lay it down. Yeah. And that's I'm either hiring ringers, so to speak, because I can't afford to work with that band on the road, or I end up second guessing after the fact. But there's no way to determine. It's just a very expensive endeavor it's hard to sustain a group with gigs. Because you can't. It's hard if it's an unknown band or whatever. Or if it's in the jazz world, it's hard to sustain enough gigs that would support doing an album. So there's a lot of stress involved, and working with you in the studio makes it as probably easy as it could be, just because. Well, yeah, I mean, it's everybody's comfortable, and everybody. What you bring to it is well, your musicianship and your what you're talking about as an engineer. Sounds like how I would describe your bass playing, which is to be supportive and listen to what's going on, and that's kind of priceless in that environment. And I'm sure Schofield and John Medeski and Jack DeJohnette and Larry Grenadier appreciate that, or maybe they don't like you. I have no idea. I've never.
They seem to. They keep coming back for more. In fact, on this new record I just did, Larry Grenadier and I are actually doing. We're both playing on one of my tunes.
I saw that. You're right. I heard you talking about that.
I love it because I'm playing Piccolo Bass, and Larry's playing under me, and Rachel and Omar, and I'm really proud of that one. It's a almost Eberhard Weberish kind of tune, which is interesting, but kind of another throwback to.
Which is interesting because online, Larry's pretty famous for being in chat rooms talking a whole lot of smack about you.
Yeah,
he's that kind of guy.
He's that kind of guy. Yeah,
I've only met him once.
Him and that gut string. What's that? What's that about? One gut string or whatever.
Shots fired. World star.
He's like one of the most loveliest human beings.
He's one of the loveliest guys. We're going to do a benefit at the Bearsville Theater on the 19th. Leslie and I will be there. And Rebecca, Martin, his wife, Larry.
Oh, yeah.
Byron Isaac and his band.
19th of what, December? Or
19th of December. It's going to be an afternoon for food. It's not the food pantry. It's Woodstock Table or something like that.
Excellent.
But yeah, and it'd be nice. It's kind of duets, but we'll play some things together. I think Rachel's going to come up and play a couple of things with us. So,
interesting. The first time I heard Rebecca and Larry play together, Schofield was on it. It was at the over at the Falcon.
Yep.
That was an amazing night of music.
Yeah. Maybe I'll call that guy up and see if he wants to come up.
John,
he'll be off the road with working with Dave Holland.
Yeah, I've been following.
I have too. I love that he posts those pictures. It's so great.
Have you seen
them? Have you seen them?
They're going through Europe in a tour bus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, it's really
just
good.
Photographs of like the scene. Like,
I love the one with Dave where he's going kind of like, John, I think you should stop taking photos.
It's really
Dave's
funny.
so proper, so it's so great. Yeah. But I got to work with Dave a bit during the pandemic because he was teaching at New England Conservatory online, so I helped him set up all of his stuff. Unfortunately, his house burned down basically last
Dave
spring.
Holland's house?
Yeah, it happened last Easter.
Oh my God!
Yeah, and he I think he lost one of his good bases, but the best bases, the ones he uses the most, were okay.
I had no idea.
Yeah, he was pretty low key. He lives not too far from me.
I was going to say he's over in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, and I would go over and help him with different things, just getting his shit together, and also to set up so he could teach easily from home. And but he's another lovely guy, talk about he always hands me a bass. Hey, check out the new electric. Because he loves playing electric actually, which he didn't when he was with Miles, but now he loves it.
Yeah.
But he's got action on it that makes your average upright look like So I'm trying to play. Dave, I can't play this bass. I'm like, you have hands of jackhammers.
Yeah, he's got some pretty
Yeah, and watching him play, I remember we did this a quartet record with Craig Taborn, Dave. Who else is on it? Ches Smith, wonderful drummer actually. He plays with David Torn quite a bit.
Okay.
And one more guy who plays sax, and it's gone out of my head. But anyway, just watching Dave for 8 hours, I learned so much about about posture, everything, because he's playing hard, and they're playing for like 8 hours, and they're not taking breaks. I mean, they were maybe a couple of minutes between a song. I'm going, no way, man. And he's, in his 70s. I'm thinking, man, there's something going on here. And I realized, after a while that it was all about positioning and just the way he was holding his body and everything. So
balance.
Another really good lesson,
Yeah, that's something I struggle with, is just having the right balance where there's no extra tension.
Ron Carter's got it for you. I have a couple of friends who took lessons with Ron, and Ron won't let you play a note until he makes sure that you're holding the bass properly. Like he may do 4 lessons like that, make you look in a mirror and no, don't play anything yet. The clock's ringing.
I had a friend who said he took a lesson. It was just like 1 hour of the F major scale.
That's what I mean. Yeah. So then he must have had decent posture because he got to actually play a couple of notes. But that's good.
Yeah.
But there is
too.
There is importance to all of that. Well, this is a guitar player. We get ergonomically challenged all the time between our backs and our and carpal tunnel and everything else, or whatever else you could be developing. So
what I struggle with more than anything in the last, I'd say, 30 years is it all changes based on who's around you playing. Like I can be very comfortable at home and get a sweet spot, and then you go to a gig and do a sound check, and somebody's cymbals just way louder than
you. All of a sudden you're tense and you're
and all the setup that you're very comfortable with doesn't serve you anymore. Like you just feel, I feel like I don't know what instrument this is, or I can't play, and that's the hard part. Yeah. Like in the studio, it's hard too if you're in a place where you're like in certain rooms I'm comfortable, in other rooms I'm just not, and it's irritating. At minimum, it's irritating.
That's 100% truth. It doesn't seem to change either. That's the one thing I always think.
But those guys don't seem to struggle with it. Or I've never seen every time I see Schofield play in any environment, he's just always has that face happening, and he's into and he's always making beautiful music.
I agree with you. I think it
seems to be able to do it.
Yeah, there's an adapting, and maybe that's just it. They just have some ability to adapt a little quicker to the surrounding
or the philosophy of let the chips fall. And,
right.
And
to be fair, when you're performing a largely improvisational music, you have a bit more room to make adjustments in everything from volume to how dense something is. If a room is really reverberating a certain way, if you're playing, tunes that are arranged, you got to play them the way you're supposed to play them. There's a smaller window of opportunity to make those adjustments.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about it like that, but that is true. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but I hear that. But I hear what you're saying. Even when somebody gets together and just plays standards, sometimes I think, they don't really adjust for the space they're in. I mean, I know I have many times not, and then I gave it some thought and said, "Oh yeah, just don't play so loud, or don't play with that articulation and hope that everyone will kind of see you're doing that and move with you."
Yeah, and also you don't know what it sounds like 20 feet away from you.
That's always the crapshoot of you're standing pretty close to your amp, but you have no clue what's happening out in this space.
Yeah, or how much. Yeah,
and you're hoping the sound guy is actually paying attention and hopefully making it decent.
Hopefully, that's all a crapshoot.
I mean, and again, in a way, that's another reason for the comfort level. I've actually started playing. I think I had them at. Did I have them at your gig? No, I used the other speakers, but I have a couple of QSCs I have firing up at me. Because most of the time I'll just give the front of house. I don't even care. For some rockier things I'll use the amp, but I just want to hear myself in a nice, pleasant way with enough direct tone, especially playing bass, that you hear the articulation of the note.
Yeah.
And that's how Kurt Rosenwinkel's set up now. He's using a couple QSCs and a fractal, and it's all about him.
Do that a couple years ago. The last one I saw.
I mean, you're a little at the mercy of the sound man, but you are anyway if you're playing on stage and they're miking your amp. So it's always a little bit tricky to know if it's coming across out front the same way. But
I saw him at the Blue Note with that big band. They made the record. I'm forgetting the name of the record though. But
me too.
It was a fractal, and you could see the name of the tune come up. So he was set up.
He definitely has his shit together with that.
Yeah. Yeah, not as a player so much. But,
no, not at all. I know.
Shout out to Kurt.
I know. Well, that's because he had to go and learn to play the piano now, so he could do a piano record.
He's always been That again, so annoying.
Yeah, so annoying.
Let me know, of course, if this is starting to go too long at any point. I have a few other things I want to touch on.
Well, I'll just throw me out.
We got the time. I mean, don't let me hog time if you have more questions to ask. But so like one of the things I want to touch on for a little bit is some like production and engineering concepts.
Okay, sure.
So like, first to touch on what's something you feel like a realization as an engineer that made your job a lot easier, that kind of like changed the way you approached engineering?
Mm-hmm.
And please use me as the example.
Yeah, I could do that.
Mic them up.
Put the guitar amp as far away from you as possible.
I feel the same way, actually. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a hard one only because you every time you think you learn something, next time you do it, it's probably going to be different. There's some basic things that do somewhat stay static, but I think in a more global sense, not trying to impose myself on the session, at least initially. Sometimes I wind up imposing a little more. And what I mean by that is I actually go out and usually try to listen to as much of the band as I can. But, let me really hear how the drummer's playing that snare drum. Is he ghosting some notes and I'm not aware of that? Stuff like that. I won't usually put my head down on Matt Fink's amp, but, for normal people, play at decent volumes. But what kind of tone is coming out of the amp? And are you hearing that tone where you're standing? You know what I mean? Or are you hearing, because, as soon as you're not got your head down there where the microphone is, it's a different sound.
It really is, and for me, it's in the room.
Right.
Like if I'm in your biggest room, big live, I prefer to record in that room.
Sure, it makes sense.
And I don't know if that's because the way you're miking it, because I know you usually do 2 mics, right?
Yeah, usually with guitar, I use a ribbon and a dynamic. May or may not wind up that way in a mix. Sometimes, especially if we did overdubs, I might skew that balance on the 2 different ones to create slightly different tone or imaging, stuff like that. Again, it's not rocket science, but those are starting places. Drums, again, like the band thing I said before, become so important that everybody's hearing them well. So spending some time with headphones, hopefully, because nobody's going to ever be happy. Some people are let go about it much quicker than others, but nobody's ever completely happy with headphones. I mean, it's just they're accepting in the end. It just is what it is. I'm good in headphones. I actually kind of prefer it because I like, especially when I play acoustic guitar, I like the fact that I can really place myself around the mic and almost even with the guitar work it a little bit. I need a little more low end in a passage, and I know I need to lean, more this way a little bit. I mean, this is all subtle stuff, or I need it to be a little brighter in a section. Mm-hmm. Then I know to kind of lean a little this way because I'm going to get more brightness towards the bridge or something. Mm-hmm. But I'm really listening in headphones. That's something I don't think a lot of people do. Hear their tone in the headphones and make adjustments accordingly, because you are hearing the most intimate, up in your face representation, and for the most part. I mean, we could throw in some room mics and things and make it a little more natural.
I know I need that.
Yeah, we have done that. Or somebody needs more reverb than others. Some people want extreme amounts of reverb in their headphones. I try to dissuade that with some things, but if it's about creating a vibe, then it's got to kind of go with it. Yep. So that's an important aspect. I think simplicity, trying to capture the sound as simply as I can first. Like, because I own it doesn't mean I have to use it. So I listen.
Philosophy.
I listen and I go, yeah, what's the simplest path to get this onto tape? Later on, if we want to mess with it, great. But we want to have what you did on the tape. And again, particularly because I'm doing music that largely remains at least pretty close to what we're recording, as opposed to, okay, we recorded this, but then we're going to mix a completely different sounding record. That's kind of a whole nother kind of thing when you're doing that. Then almost anything goes. Then you might as well just try every crazy thing you can, But yeah, if I'm going to try and capture what the band is about, then I'm going to go the simplest route. And I'd see a lot of people try and get tricky with that, or I've got to use a certain preamp for this, or it won't sound good through this. And I'm like, you really want to do the A/B test because you're going to fail. Yeah. I'm going to fail, but they're going to fail miserably. that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
okay. And then so as a producer, when you're mixing the records, do you have like a particular philosophy or is there a particular realization you've had that
don't screw up?
Well, I always have that problem, Scott.
And what I mean by that is, like, never get so caught up in doing something that is cool or hip, maybe like a sound or an effect, but it kind of obliterates an aspect of the song that's really important. I'm a groove guy first. I mean, I know people, when I was working a lot with singer-songwriters, it took me a long time to realize that they listen to the words first. And not everybody does that. I mean, they've done studies on this. When people listen to music, how many people identify first with the beat?
Me. I 100%.
A lot of us who play jazz, that's the way it is. Someone who plays a guitar and sings a song, it's the melody and the song and the singing.
Yeah.
They hear that before they hear anything else.
I hear the melody before the lyrics. Yeah. If I like the melody, then I'll cue into the
exactly.
The
I'm
lyrics.
the same way, and that's very typical, I think, of instrumentalists in particular.
Oh, okay.
Because we those are the things we want. We want groove and we want melody.
Melody, yeah.
And okay, lyrics are good.
Yeah.
But if you just wrote a song, or if you're someone who listens to a lot of words from songs, then that's going to be really forefront.
Yeah.
So try not to get in the way of that if you're working on a song. If you're working on a tune where Matt's playing melody, then you want to make sure you enhance that melodic line, because that's the next thing that the audience is going to tune into. They want to hear what the melody is. They're going to feel the groove, want to hear the melody, and then the rest of the rhythm section is sort of the gel. I mean, every tune's going to be a little different, but that's kind of a basic philosophy. Don't mess up the top and the bottom. Which would also include the bass, obviously, because that's part of that groove. So bass and drums on the bottom. If I can make something sounds good with bass, drums, no chords or anything else, and the melody line at the top, I know I'm like 90% there to a good mix. Because the rest of the stuff, I just find where it should sit. Mm-hmm. And that's also the stuff that tends to get flipped around a little bit more. So,
okay.
So that's regardless of how many instruments are in the project that you're working on?
Yeah, but I try to convince people to use fewer instruments when possible, but arrange them better. Again, that overtone series pyramid really becomes important to me. It's like, have we got this down here covered? And usually it's, this is a lot of octave stuff. Then maybe in the middle we've got little more harmonic content happening, and then the real colors at the top. And if that happens, it's amazing what 2-3 instruments can create as opposed to 14 instruments. Or and then I start to categorize things like, okay, this strummed guitar part is adding percussion, and this more arpeggiated and ambient part is adding more color. So I might treat them differently in how they're placed in a mix.
Okay.
So I'm not negating that those things, or things that come in and then disappear and stuff like that. But again, to me, it's like there's a shape to songs that has worked, whether we talk about the form or we talk about the kind of curve. Are we starting out up here and coming down a bit and then moving up? But we always have sort of this, what you used to call the shout chorus aspect, to which we reach this peak and then it would start to make its way down to the end, or maybe it'll end at that peak. But but those ideas of like what's the shape of it, to me, dictate when you should be bringing in or out certain elements, so that you're not necessarily making the drums and the bass louder, or rhythm guitar or something. So
you're orchestrating sonically.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always come to me, and maybe it's because of my background and training, always orchestration and arranging, and the word production to me is just somewhat synonymous with that. That's not everybody's definition of it, but in effect, that's what it is. You know what I mean?
Now, for a young producer, what's one of like the more nuanced things that are just hard to hear? Like, what's something you have to really train your
frequencies?
Ear to? Just every individual,
yeah. I mean, you should know when you're listening to your mix that I've got an issue around 220. Okay. You should be able to go. I need more clarity in the guitar, but he's a little raspy at 7K, so maybe I'm going to boost 2.5. You don't have to have it exactly. You won't be exact, but you should have a sense of where these things live. Because otherwise you're just playing willy nilly with, that's why I get these home mixes of people with these EQ curves that are insane. I mean, if you see a boost or a cut in any of my records, they're tiny. They're tiny little cuts more than boosts, and boosts tend to be on the extremes.
Yeah,
it's like I can lift the whole bass a little, or lift the whole top end, but in that mid range there, I'm either trying to find problems and dipping them a bit. Or if I need a little enhancement, they tend to be kind of fairly what we call wide Q, because I want them to kind of travel over, but not loud, but just have a fairly wide Q so that they lift in the spot I need, but it's a gradual place. It's more musical for one. That's how all of the great analog EQs work. Like my APIs, as I dial in more, the Q actually goes from being very pointed. And the Q is how wide we're upping or decreasing a signal. So it actually does this. It folds out. So now I'm raising it less here where I wanted it, but I'm also bringing it up gradually on both sides.
Oh. So
I'm creating a more musical way. Whereas if I just did a peak, obviously I'm creating a resonance that's going to bark out, in certain places. Right. So I'll tend to cut resonances, boost musically in a few different ranges. So, and there's a good reason why, you go to a Neve EQ and it's set for 7K, because that's perfect frequency to bring up the snare drum with a fairly medium, Q to it. And or 12K to add all the air at the top, stuff like that. So, they didn't just make those numbers up. They're very musical. You can again go into the overtone series and harmonics and everything else, but that's, to me, learn what you're hearing, and then apply that to this music that you're listening to.
Well, you also have an uncanny way of being able to take someone's description and convert it into what those numbers mean. Like, I know I've been like, something's wrong, and you're like, well, what's wrong? And I'll describe it, and then you know what I'm referring, because I don't think in those
and
numbers.
You just said something else that took me a long time to learn. Ask what's wrong. Because if I'm hearing it and it sounds good to me, I go, so sounds good to me. What's wrong?
Right.
And or sometimes I'm the one going, man, there's something I'm just not quite there yet. It's just not sitting. And then I'll either, sometimes then I start to look at you or the player and go, what can we do different to?
Well, that's the musician side of you too, that you recognize something physically.
Right. Well, what's in the chain that maybe we can alter slightly, so I'm not messing with it so much on the other side. Yeah. So those are big ones for me.
Yeah. I mean that's like, I'm still have so much like to learn about that side of things, and it's really not my focus, but I'm sure there's a lot of listeners who really need that.
With so many people recording at home, it's just helpful, even if you don't have the primo listening experience, because some of that stuff will crop up because of the way you're listening. An issue or a peak or a resonance or a standing wave or all these other technical terms, but the overall thing is understanding that, well, okay, in a mix, we all like our guitars when we're listening to them to be big and round and chunky and everything else. But the truth is in a mix, Bruce Swadian, who did all of those great records like Michael Jackson's Thriller and everything else, he was high passing the guitar at 300 hertz. There was nothing below that, because that's what spoke in the mix. Now, again, that's mostly in a pop context, and you're filling in lots of other stuff, so that might not be, you don't go, but Bruce Swadian does it at 300 hertz, so I'm going to lop it there. But losing a little bit of that at the bottom gives me more room for the kick drum, a little more room for the bass, and all of a sudden the guitar speaks, and it doesn't need the weight that it was carrying around. So stuff like that on its own. And that's another thing, is soloing things is a mix blessing. In fact, if anything, when I solo something or adjust something, I shouldn't say a solo, but if, say, I want to adjust the kick drum, this is a really hard thing for most people to grasp early on, is they're listening to the kick drum. I'm listening to everything else, because as I change that kick drum, everything else is changing in relation to that. And when that feels right, everything else feels right.
That's right.
So you know what I mean? It's always the relationship to everything. And so that's a very hard one for people to learn, but really good engineers get it. One day you just wake up and go, oh,
Yeah, and
nobody cares about the kick drum. They care about how it feels in the whole track, you know?
It's also hard to have more than one person giving you feedback about what you're listening to.
Yeah, because everybody's got a different opinion.
Yeah, which also ends up being much more expensive. And that was a tough one to learn. I'm still learning that one, but a lot of that learning happens in your studio, working with different people and then realizing, okay.
I'm glad I could take all that money from you, but... but I'm giving it all back right now. So literally,
those are expensive.
Literally, they charge a fortune to be on this show.
Yeah, it is. That one was that I know that I specifically in your studio working with different people. Like I'd like to make everybody happy, but you can't.
You can't, and you shouldn't, because once they leave the building, if we do good work, they will like it.
Yeah.
Even if it's not in that moment, right. Yeah, right. Well, there is always the case that, but hopefully for your first line of defense in production is hopefully you've got the people who you think are going to make the best noise.
Yeah, that's the first line. Yeah.
And that sometimes you don't know, and there's something to be said. Well, especially when people used to have more budgets, to being able to take an experiment and say, this guy may not be the guy you'd expect to do this, but he could bring something completely different to it. He could also bring a total disaster to it. So that's the downside. So as a producer, if I have a budget, I always weigh those things. I've gotten bad tracks from really great players occasionally if they didn't care.
Yeah.
If they cared, they're great.
I've also watched you make some of those tracks sound
really great.
Yeah. I know a few of them.
Yeah, I do too. Which is also a remarkable side of what you do in production. It's like you know that there's something there, and then you know what to do to pull it out.
Yep. But I also like recently I had to say to somebody, listen, we need to this one we really need to redo. It was a drum track that just it was never going to be. I could make it be in time, but it would never feel good.
Oh,
that kind of thing. Yeah. So I was like, in the time it's going to take me to try to make this something, we can do this again, and with a little direction, it'll come off. And an hour later, it was done.
Yeah.
So sometimes you got it, but sometimes people are, oh, I don't really want to bring them back. It's going to cost more money and everything else. I'll be like, I'm telling you,
they're going to pay you.
If you're
going to
use this song, you're going
to,
and I don't want to do it.
I know you don't.
All right. Well, just to round off the production talk, as for like a example of something you worked on, I was really curious about the Dave Brubeck tapes that you did for for Time Out. Did you learn something in particular about Brubeck that did those extra takes show you something different about that music that made you think about it differently, or music in general differently? And was there any particular challenges to working with the older tracks, like the sound of them and the way they were recorded?
Okay, well, we were lucky that Sony transferred the masters for me at 192 kilohertz. I wound up bumping it down because 192 is a pain to work with. But for archiving, that's great. And they came from the master tapes from the sessions. They were around 12 reels altogether. Unusually for Dave, at the time, they went in for 2 different session periods. They went for 2 days. Actually, it might have been 3 altogether initially, which is long because Dave liked to make a record and leave in a day. And then came back 2 weeks later and did another hit. But here's the interesting thing. I mean, I knew Dave well because I grew up with Chris and Danny, and we were friends, and we've been in bands together, and I've worked with them. And I did a couple other records with Dave when he was alive. And one of the most joyful human beings and players ever, which comes across in the talking. That's what's really great, is the talking between the takes, him communicating with the room. The producer's always in his room. You hear him on the speaker, and that's it. And they're talking about the takes, and the band's talking. But mostly, what I was most amazed at was particularly the song Take 5. They had just come back from a State Department tour of the Middle East, and Joe Morello got down in the dirt literally every morning with a bunch of street musicians and was playing Brubeck and hand drums with them and everything else. And they're playing in odd meters. And that's where a lot of this started. And he came back, and the first few takes of take 5, he sounds like he's trying to play the Brubeck. He's playing the side of the drums. He's got all this metal sounds and no relationship to what we know of as take 5. Very cool.
Yeah.
But he keeps giving up. He keeps going, I can't get it. I just can't get it, They tried doing it. I think they actually did a few takes that way. Then they started to morph, left it for a day or so, came back, and then it started to morph into the one we know. The take we wound up taking was a really, really good take. I'd say as good as the original, the one everybody knows. Except maybe Dave's solo wasn't quite as happening. It's clearly he was feeling out some ideas that you then hear in the next take for sure. But the groove had still not quite reached the take 5 we know. But the drum solo was great. I think it's a great solo. I think it's as good a solo as the famous solo.
And now this is out now.
It's been out since I guess last December. So because we had to try and get it out in the calendar year for.
And what is it? Just take 5 redux or reissue?
It's all of Time Out. It's Dave Brubeck's Time Out album with all alternate takes.
Wow.
And normally I don't dig those kinds of things because there's a reason why they were alternate takes, as you know.
Yeah, and sometimes there's no there's not. I mean,
not much difference, or they weren't as good.
Yeah.
But in this case, they are just very different because they were experimenting with time signatures that are easy to us now, relatively speaking. But you hear Joe Morello like cursing about I can't quite get the 7 right, and Gene Wright not quite nailing it, and so it was new to them. So therefore, there's also some interesting things that happened that weren't just rote because they were so familiar with it. So that was nice, and it was also recorded on 3 tracks, so that was technically interesting. It was recorded in the same studio as Kind of Blue 6 months earlier, so basically same equipment, same production team, very different sounding records, and just really iconic kinds of things about it, and just hearing the band patter. And the talk with Teo producing it just kind of was kind of a revelatory moment. And then you just put yourself back in that time and say all this other stuff hadn't come yet.
That's amazing. I didn't realize. I mean, I saw you posted about that, but I didn't realize that's what you were doing.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was really great. And I've done a few other compilation records with people, and I've always felt a little let down that we really just found stuff that was good and interesting. I felt the Jack Johnson box set had some stuff, I think Dave even said, that should have probably never seen the light of day, but historically it's interesting. Yeah. This feels like all music all the way through.
That's amazing.
So, I mean, whether you love Dave's music or not, it's very true to being a Dave Brubeck record and not some kind of a just cheap spin-off or something.
And when you say 3-track, that's one of those huge consoles, right? It looks like something you'd see at NASA.
Yeah, that was big, but the actual machine was an Ampex machine that had 3 individual tracks, and what they did was they put the piano on this, usually was the track 1, which was kind of left, drums on the right, and they put Paul and Eugene in the center on the same track. And it kind of made sense, the highest instrument and lowest instrument, so they still had a little control over frequencies.
Yeah.
So I could actually mix it, which I'm kind of proud of the mix of it, and it's got some amazing reviews in stereo magazines because, I had the benefit of a lot of other things. I think I kind of beat the first stereo mix for sure of the real record,
Wow.
So that was kind of fun. And I didn't even really think about it, but I actually sought out stereo versions of the record, and I found one in Dave's house. It was a Cat's Eye Blue label. It was, the CBS label had this little blue, and it was like a cat's eye. Yeah. That was like the one. That one was the perfect sounding one because there were so many versions that were put out.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it was remastered 3 or 4 times, almost all of them badly especially compared to that. And so it was kind of archaeology. Chris did a lot of research on what actually happened at the sessions. There was a guy writing a book at the same time about basically that whole period, but particularly Dave's session, and then Kind of Blue after it. So he had a ton of information and even photos. So we saw how they were set up in the studio. So we used that for panning information and stuff like that. Yeah,
that's fascinating.
Cool. Yeah, it's neat. It was fun.
Wow.
Now, getting to work with Dave in person when you did, was there anything just, in the concept of music in general that he taught you just from how you got to see his approach and the way he worked?
Yeah, the biggest thing was when Dave listened to playback, he was like a kid. He would be sitting there swinging and snapping his fingers as if he'd never heard these guys before.
It was a take he just did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was like, he was joyful, like beyond belief joyful. It was like, wow, that's... And, if you do read the history on Dave, he was a very successful musician, but he had some real crap happen to him in the beginning of his career between his record label being stolen from him, all these other things. I mean, he had some pretty down times.
I'm not aware.
Yeah, but it's like it all looks like it was all roses the whole time. And yeah, he was a real star and did well, obviously, because he connected with so many people. But it was the joyfulness of it, and it's the one thing that I wish more people could bring in, especially when they're in the studio. They can do that a little easier sometimes in live performance because there's an audience there to at least kick them in the head a little bit, hopefully by liking what they're doing.
Yep.
But man, you might as well like what you're doing.
Well, it's also the stress if you're spending it.
That's true too.
But he probably wasn't in that situation.
No. But when he was on Fantasy, he probably was because he'd started the label, and then when he went to go out on tour, long story short, he basically, the accountant who wound up being John Fogerty's manager, which you probably know some of those stories that John Fogerty in Creedence Clearwater got sued over and over and all kinds of stuff by his manager, even losing his name in basically every dollar he ever made in the band. Sued by the same guy who stole the label from Dave. Oh. He comes back and I have no label. So it was George Avakian says, well, Dave, come over to CBS and record for us, and it was like, we'll work something out. Because at that point, they didn't really know if they were a jazz label or what they were. They were doing, Perry Como and all that stuff. And he wound up making an amazing deal with them where the family got everything back when Dave passed. And that never happens.
No.
So, in fact, the lawyers who are long dead, the new lawyers were reading it going, what?
Yeah.
So he stepped in it, but along the way, there were a lot of downsides. But yeah, joyful musician. Chick was the same way. I can't think of a person who just was more thrilled to sit at an instrument and play. And you just go, wow. It's not all about, we all have our friends who beat themselves up constantly. and you go, maybe a little less of that and just letting go. And
who also talks about that a lot is Vinny. Vinny Kelly. I don't know. Do you listen to his Breakfast? Breakfast with Vinny podcast. But he talks about, specifically Chick, being that way and how he learned from that and being able to be in that moment and letting go and just.
First time I met Chick Corea was in 1979 at Creative Music Studio. He came for a concert there with Miroslav, Jack, Anthony Braxton, and Pat Metheny, and Lee Konitz playing together. It was great. It was a wonderful concert. I wanted to meet Chick because he's a hero of mine. I knew Jack already, and I'd actually already met Metheny a couple of times because he was somewhat local. Chick gets off stage. I'm there and going, Mr. Corea, classic thing. And he all of a sudden starts going, "You're a musician, right?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Bartok string quartets," and he starts going into the.
No kidding.
Literally, he just starts going off about he's been working on the Bartok string quartets, and he's just this incredible excitement. And meanwhile, I'm just like, I'm like a deer in the headlights.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it was like wow, he immediately kind of accepted me in some way, and that's the way he would be, was very accepting of people, and for whatever reason, he got a vibe that maybe I was serious about what I was trying to do. And
I've said this, and I'll say it again. I've never met a great musician who wasn't like that. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, like outstanding, brilliant people.
I think that's true.
They want to engage.
Yeah.
If they know that you are open to that, they will have that conversation with you, and they're not mean about it.
Nope.
Because I've met some not so nice people in this industry.
Yeah.
And or for lack of a better word, industry. But like that doesn't surprise me at all with Chick. I've seen him speak. I've watched him talk many times, and just open.
Dave Schofield. I mean, the list is really endless with that. I mean, some people just feel more zen, like, I did what I did. I did what I did. Those two guys in particular had some kind of joy, as if they were hearing something for the first time that was they didn't even have anything to do with. Like, oh, what a great idea! It's like,
Yeah.
So that's something to think about. And I'm sure they heard when they made a clunker or something, but if they did, it was just part of what it was at that point.
Part of what if you're talking about those people in particular, or Sco or Chick, I don't think they're thinking about themselves and comparing themselves to anybody else.
No.
I think it's just about the music, because that's part of what you could feel bad
Well,
about.
imagine being a person like that who basically created part of the vocabulary that everybody else uses. And there's two guys right there,
Yeah, it's true.
It's like, I go back and listen to Schofield in 1976 or something like that, and go, he sounds so modern and so ahead of everyone,
and you know exactly who it is.
Yeah.
And I just listened to in the car the other day all of Hudson. And I was going through the stuff that you had been part of, and every record I've ever heard of him always takes you on a journey.
It does.
There's no fat. It's like everything just from the moment it starts, no matter what they're doing. And all of those musicians involved on Hudson are exactly like that.
Exactly like that.
And that's why you're not cutting anything up and joining things together. Like they're all telling a story.
And if and when we do any kind of editing, it's usually because we want to grab something or create something different, not
different.
Some kind of repair. It's like,
right.
Oh, that was kind of a cool idea, and we're in an improvisation, and we can do it.
Yeah.
So then we have are we going to be just documenting everything? But nothing, there's no major fixing or gridding or anything like that. That's not going to happen with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Very gentle people and lovely human beings, and it comes across in how they play.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Totally. Got anything else?
I mean, I could go on. There's so much I want to know.
What the 5-hour interview? No.
Yeah, I mean, I love
throw another one.
Another one. All right, here's another production thing I thought of. Do we need the surround sound? Is it really that big a difference? Like, is that all just for like listening to a movie, or is there really a benefit to having more than two sources of the audio?
I'm moving into Dolby Atmos now. And I'll be able to answer that question, I think, a lot better in about 6 months to a year, because I do think it is the immersive aspect of it in the right circumstances. And since we can do this now with headphones, and we can get a good binaural representation of this 360-degree space, it does enhance some music I've heard. I feel like we're at the same place we would have been with early stereo. People trying too much trickery. But the idea that we can kind of create sort of this room behind or room way in front, I like that sonically, because it puts everything into a little bit of a sound stage that stereo can't do. Stereo is always going to have a bit of aspect of it's coming from speakers. And really good surround, Atmos in particular, does have this sense of coming at you from everywhere the way a live concert might, But is it good for every kind of music? I don't know.
Is it really only practical to do in a studio space, or are we going to get to a point where we have surround sound in a car?
My car is surround sound,
and it's mixed that way, and
it's set up for immersive. In fact, I get software updates for the immersive audio system.
Okay.
And now it does it a little different way. It has the traditional speakers like every other car in the door and everywhere else, but it has these what are called upfires, which will give you the what we would call the ceiling, the overheads, and it's a little bit of an illusion. But there's systems that you can buy for your house like that as well if you want to do a home theater. The thing why this could catch on, as opposed to all the other forms that have come before it, is that this works extremely well in headphones, and so many, particularly kids, listen to their music in earbuds.
Yeah.
And they've already done these tests with like playing a regular stereo mix and then an immersive mix, and you watch the kid's face just go like this. Like all of a sudden, well, they're really tuned into virtual reality, into artificial intelligence, into the Oculus and all this other stuff. So right away for gaming and things like that, wow, this is like a whole nother world, because you're doing what you're doing in 3 dimensions here. So there I definitely see it. But I've heard some mixes that I think it does enhance it. Like, believe it or not, some symphony mixes, things like that, where all of a sudden the back of the room starts to play into it. And if you closed your eyes, you go, wow, the orchestra's up there, but sound is kind of emulating everywhere. And it's also the darker sounds from the back are kind of, they're coming from where they should. You feel them here. Feel the height, what happens in a hall. So that's kind of cool. I think it's got potential. Pop music, I'm not sure yet. I really don't know.
Okay. All right. Well,
jazz,
how about this? You're so steeped in so many aspects of music, and so advanced
like
in your knowledge of them.
Scott, teabagging.
Scott, teabag Petito.
He's on to you. That's going back to the 80s. You thought we forgot about that. Goddamn internet.
So, but you know a lot about different parts of music, and you're obviously a deep artist, and you're very accomplished. If you had to put all the music aside, what's an art that you'd want to pursue that you feel close to?
I keep telling myself I want to paint to be a painter, basically.
Cool, because I have 4 walls.
I got you. Well, that's the best painting I do. But in fact, I remember to this day, I did take a lot of art classes, particularly in high school. I had a really good art teacher who kind of led us down my path, and several of my friends who wound up being in the arts, a couple of visual artists, a couple of musicians. And I remember bringing in my final project and presenting it to him, and it was some poppies that I had painted in my backyard the night before it was due, even though I had like 7 months to do it. And in the dark, because of course it was like 4 a.m. after coming home from drinking all night.
Yes.
And I hadn't even really completely looked at it. And I think it was still wet, right? So I went and I pulled the cover off, and I just remember this teacher just guffawing like no one has ever done before. He's on the floor crying. And then he decided to give up teaching. So
he told you to get into stand-up comedy.
Exactly. He said, you got to, there's room for you at the Copacabana. So, but somehow I always thought, if I really put my mind to it, I think I could actually do it.
And then even after you see Leslie's sister's paintings, you still...
Oh, yeah. Well, I've never painted like that.
Yeah. I just remember seeing them when we were there.
Yeah, she's insane.
That's insane.
She's a realist painter, and it's great, crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that, and then other days maybe just writing. Actually, I actually would like to write some kind of a book at some point. And at first, I thought, I should write about the stuff I know. But then I thought, maybe I should write about stuff I really have no idea about, I don't know, write a mystery or something.
You were doing this, though.
Well, I do that online. Yeah, my novel.
About that.
My novel, yes, wasn't in Pittsburgh. I don't know what got me on that. Somebody said you ought to write a book, so I said, okay, I will, 1 line at a time.
That provided some of that was during the pandemic or just
before it. Before it, yeah.
I forgot about that,
but
I had a couple of real out loud belly laughs. I'm like, what the hell is going on?
No, stream of consciousness, man.
Over
stream
at NRS.
Yeah,
what is Scott Petito?
I'd get up in the morning and write a stream of consciousness, and I had this whole, the whole thing, I think I introduced like 30 characters in the first 5 lines.
You still bring it back now and again, and people are like, what happened? I forgot all about that.
I have this whole conversation with myself about how, I don't know, man. I don't think, I've got a character, and I'm talking to one of my friends, and I'm going, I don't know, man. The audience, they're too demanding. I can't, because the guy's a novelist in it. So I'm saying, I think I got to quit. So and so they're all upset. And then somehow they all wound up in England, and the guy with a chauffeur, and Mr. Hashimoto, and all these guys.
Yeah, you were going for it. I forgot all. You didn't even have to follow it. You could just check in any day with what you were doing and be like,
no. The nice thing was it was like a complete novel in each sentence.
Yeah, I forgot.
I
might be the thing to check out.
I might bring it back. I did try another one briefly. It was called Murder After Dinner, but that one was short lived. I may bring that back. I just I wasn't feeling it like I was with.
You're supposed to wait 20 minutes after eating before murder anyway, or you can cramp.
You can cramp, and so part of me says, I should do that. But that's another thing of like, it had to be stream of consciousness. If I thought about it, I couldn't write a line. It's like, okay, whatever this is, like, in my psyche from watching too much, James Bond and Odd Couple shows, kind of like the mishmash, that and the Brady Bunch. You put all 3 of those together, that's the entire content of my mind, So yeah, mostly Brady Bunch,
That makes a lot of sense. I'm glad that you
said little Gilligan's Island in there.
Oh wow,
yeah. People always, like Leslie will ask me a question, and I kind of glazed over, and she says, "What's going on in there?" I says, "Well, I just ran episode 22 of Gilligan's Island."
That'll do it. It's a good show.
Oh yeah,
good show. I haven't thought about that show in a while either.
No, you got to have that stuff,
Yeah.
And then when I was a kid, we memorized all the lines to The Odd Couple. So, you'd be able to say the line right before Oscar or Felix, and it would be like...
All right, so, as long as we're on that, we might as well finish with the, Ginger or Marianne?
Marianne.
Really?
Yeah. I know. It's hard.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. It was always Ginger for me. That's interesting. Yeah. No offense, Brad.
Yeah.
I don't even know who you're talking about. So.
Well, you
just go with Ginger.
Okay. Yeah. This sounds like for my generation, it's like SpongeBob. Like every like person my age I talk to, we just have this like burned in like knowledge of SpongeBob.
Yep. No, I most of my one-liners come from 60s TV shows, 60s and 70s TV shows.
Yeah.
Like to this day, Now Thinking Unger.
Yeah, it was always the. I thought Three's Company had the masterful command of the misunderstood innuendo. Every episode, they always seem to have this. Mr. Furley or Mr. Roper's like, what's going on in there? And then it turns out they're just washing the dishes, and talking about it.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen that referenced on Family Guy or something.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
I must have gotten it secondhand.
This is a good point. I think we're very influenced. All of our 3 generations. We're separated by a few years each here,
mm-hmm.
but the media around us has been really important in who we are. So I don't want to deny that. I don't want to. I'm not thinking about all of that all the time, but that's part of the fun of having been alive and stuff. You know? And it's very insightful into the culture we live in.
Yeah.
And the changes that we've gone through.
Especially now when you see that people we grew up with, what might have happened with who we thought they were are not exactly who they are as we move forward.
Right.
And we were just talking about this yesterday, actually. Just for me, it was the Cosby Show.
Well, we were just talking about Kevin Spacey earlier.
I know. Yeah. We all got our secrets. Fortunately, very few have come out today.
There's your idea for your book.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Just dishing the dirt would be
murder after dinner. I'm going to bring that one back. Dulce de leche. No, Dulce. What was
Dilemma?
Her last name?
Dulce Dilemma.
No, Dulce. That was the woman, the chef.
That's not. You're not Dulce Dilemma. I thought that was your
Dulce Dilemma. Oh well, we really ruined this. Well, I don't know. Unless you got any other things, I don't have anything to say.
Do you have anything else to say?
Like I said, I can go on, but this has been
this guy.
Like I can, but it's just been a treat. Like I love talking to you, Scott.
Thank you. Well, I can always come back.
Yeah, we definitely have to have you back.
Is it that long?
No,
it was much shorter than you thought it was.
No, it was
I think
much
it's about
shorter.
40 minutes.
Yeah,
Right?
it's not bad. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean I've driven that to your. I always.
Yeah, I know. Well, you're lazy, but I'm not. But
you have this turn that I've missed.
I missed it. Are you kidding me? I barreled past it for 30 years.
Your turn sucks. It's
Yeah,
in the
it really
middle.
sucks.
And I pulled into the other yard next to you.
Oh, you don't want to go there.
They're like, I know you, just judging by what I look like, they're like, you want to go.
Yeah.
You're next door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad. Yeah, you're like, you won't escape from there.
But yeah, this was a delightful conversation.
Thank you.
And I cannot wait to hear the next album.
Same here.
To follow up to Rainbow Gravity.
You guys will be the
Guinea pigs.
20th, 30th, maybe 50th people I send it to.
Yeah, what about
After I really thought about it. No, I think you'll like it. It's kind of in the similar vein, but different. So,
well,
and then we'll move on to something else.
Yeah, we will.
Absolutely. And we'll do something together soon. I've been wanting to do it for a while, but then the pandemic really put the kibosh.
Well, we talked about you mentioned the Jack Johnson thing.
I like the idea of trying to put that together. So we'll
if I'm being honest, I don't think I spent a lot of time with that album when I was younger. And when you mentioned it, I've probably listened to it 10 times. That's some of my favorite McLaughlin playing I have ever.
Yeah, and again, we want to get the flavor of that period. So that's always a tricky thing. But let's do it.
I would love to do it. Yeah, that's I don't think you liked my joke when I thought it was the other Jack Johnson.
No, I knew the guy. I knew who you were talking about.
Yes, I know.
I wasn't happy about it.
You were not. I thought it was funny, but what do I know?
So I did on the way here. I do have one closing thing, which I picked up a guy. Right, I never do this, but he looked like he needed a ride. So I said okay. So we're going down the road. We're going through Stone Ridge.
Sure.
And he finally says to me, so what if I was a serial killer and you picked me up? And I said to him, well, what are the chances of 2 serial killers being in the same car? I'm glad you guys are laughing.
he no longer can.
All right, I'm done.
On that note, I think we lost all 14on of our subscribers at this point.
So I'm sure you have to go clean some urine out of your back seat.
Yeah, probably. It could be that. Could be worse.
We'll let you go then.
All right.
But also, you got any dates you want to plug for some upcoming shows?
No, I actually finished.
Projects?
I finished everything. I just
the
got
December
off the
show though. You said you're doing.
Oh yeah, we'll do. Leslie and I will do a show at Bearsville on the 19th of December. We will have Byron Isaac and his group. He's in the Lumineers, and we'll have his group, the Lost Leaders, Rebecca Martin and Larry Grenadier. The two of us, Rachel Z will be there. I think Jeff Lipstein might be playing with us too. So
excellent, and that's to raise
money for. It's called Open. I believe it's called a Table of Woodstock, and they do a variety of things. It has food pantry, and they're also raising money to get kids Christmas presents and other things around around the whole area. So.
Excellent.
Yeah, Leslie and I did these benefits for the food pantries at this time for years, and we'd have every person you could think of, going all the way back to the days when Levon and Rick would do it with us, or Happy and Artie Trom, and all the other people who are no longer with us. So we thought, maybe we'll revive it.
'Tis the season.
So, and Lizzie at the theater was into it, so we're doing it.
Excellent.
Yeah, so there's that, and then other than that, I have Percy Jones coming in the studio. Do you know Percy?
I do not know Percy.
Percy's a bass player. Do you know him? You should. You should. He's one of the great bass players of all time. He was in the group Brand X.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
I just was listening to that because
John Goodsall died.
Just died. Yeah. I didn't honestly, I didn't know what I heard of them, but I never checked.
Percy was the other great fretless bassist in the Jocko era. He was, sliding harmonics and
Phil Collins on drums.
Phil Collins played drums.
Yeah.
So he's coming in. He's got a new band that he left Brand X last year. Actually, there's a whole political thing going on before Goodsall died, and anyway, we're doing that in December. So
that's amazing.
Awesome. Yeah,
well, I gotta do my homework then.
Yeah, check him out. I learned. I used to love Percy's playing. I still do, but when I was young, he was a counterbalance to what Jocko was doing in particular, and Alfonso and people.
Yeah,
wow.
Well, Alfonso's another one of the big fretless guys I think of. But cool. Yeah, I mean, I always got to learn about more. It never ends. There's always new people that I'm embarrassed.
Yeah, they have
to not know about.
Well, they have several really great records. I was always partial to one called More Rock and Roll. So More Rock and Roll. So, but the first two records are great, and then they did different ones over the years and had different alumni. A lot of connections to Genesis. He also played with David Sylvian. He's played with a bunch of the British proggy jazz guys over the years. So yeah, good guy to check out.
Awesome.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, I'd never. It was amazing. I'd never heard. I just never heard Phil play I never heard any of that stuff. It's a fascinating.
Oh no,
record.
he's a monster.
Yeah. It was pretty amazing. Yeah. Shall
All
we
right.
leave it there?
Yeah, well, Polar, sponsor us.
Yes.
If you listen again.
I recently traveled through Polar Park, and it's a wonderful place. I really enjoyed it. I didn't get to stop, but it looked nice from the highway.
And I'll look any Happy Hanukkah mug, so if any Jewish cats
with little cats on
would
it.
like to
Jewish cats
want to sponsor us, the ASPCA, whatever, we'll figure it out.
Black cherry, it's good. I mean, who knew?
That's how we roll here.
Yeah.
At the Mink and the Monk.
Yeah.
Rink and the Monk. That's it. I was calling it all kinds of things.
Yeah, none of them correct.
No, not one.
Well,
I'll get it right eventually.
Before we go out of business.
Yes.
Just
your computer's shut off anyway, so.
Perfect. Thank you, Scott Petito, for joining us.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Brad Monkell, for whatever it is you do.
Thanks for thanking me, Matt.
You're welcome. And we'll see you for the next one.
Yeah. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.